Welcome back to the techno-communism show. Um, uh, uh, there's a lot that I could say about what's going on in Gaza and Palestine. If you really want to see some of my observations or some of the things that a lot of people are, of course, talking about that I might just tend to share. You can go to my Twitter, jbenzion2024, or this Facebook, and see lots of posts along these lines. I've made no secret of my disdain for tech personalities. They are tech in Silicon Valley in the United States and in the West might as well be short for techno-fascism. These are people who, almost to a man, are people who are overwhelmingly on the side of private wealth and the ruling elites and military horrors across many countries, not just in the Levant, but this is, of course, one of the most visible horrors that we've ever seen. All of this is being live streamed from people's phones, and journalists and citizen journalists are being killed in the hundreds and hundreds. The total number of journalists killed is now at around 115. And approximately 5% of the total Gaza Strip population is badly injured, missing, or deceased because of U.S. supplied ordnance and munitions to the Zionist fascist abomination. And the U.S. is no less such an abomination. I have noticed that a lot of people, I guess, who would be described as progressives are very quick to criticize Israel. But Israel is no different from the United States in this. It's only ever existed as a military client of the U.S. Wouldn't exist at all were it not for that relationship. Wouldn't be a nuclear threat were it not for that relationship. And it's fair to say that in terms of the larger arc of history, everything that Israel does is more or less at the U.S.'s behest. I think of people kind of in denial about this in the way that there's a calculated disinformation that comes from the White House on another very closely related subject. So if you look at previous presidential administrations, you'll see a recurring theme, which is the president will sometimes say, or his spokespersons, or those close to him working in his administration will sometimes say, we don't always know what the CIA is doing. Sure, 40 million people have been killed in anti-communist wars and proxy wars, and a lot of that is coordinated directly by the CIA or done more or less as a result of this kind of CIA capture of the federal government. Sure, that's all pretty bad, but we didn't know that. Of course they know. They have all kinds of files that they have to review on a daily basis of every single department, including the Central Intelligence Agency. They read it, they rubber stamp it, they say, go ahead, kill 1 million people in Indonesia to stop people from being able to have a fucking public health service, or what have you. They always know. And they also always know Anthony Blinken is looking right into the camera and saying, I'm really sad about 15,000 dead children in Gaza. Of course he's not sad. Not at all sad. These are the people who orchestrate this kind of thing. The United States and Israel might as well be one country. It's more helpful in geopolitical terms to think of Israel as an oversized U.S. military base. As I said, there's a lot we could say about Israel and Palestine. None of it about Israel is very good. But I want to talk about a person who is um, not one of the worst tech people. He's very much representative of tech people. And this individual's name is Tal Broda, and he's the head of research at OpenAI, one of the people directly responsible for developing your digital assistant that you probably, if you're using this sort of thing, used in the last week. The most popular of these kind of digital assistant tools right now, 100 million some users across the Western world. OpenAI and ChatGPT. You should stop using ChatGPT because they refused to remove this man, Tal Broda, from their organization, despite his openly fascistic and genocidal statements about Palestinian people. He says there is no Palestine, there never was, and quite ominously, there never will be. There never was, and there never will be. He says we should never have left Gaza. He's talking as if he is an agent of Israel. We should have never left Gaza. We need to take it back by force. Um, um, and it would be nice. It would be really nice if this person were an outlier, a rare case. But you won't find tech people who are really any better than this. They are people who are have no qualms at all about consolidating private wealth at your expense and creating a great deal of geopolitical havoc, not just in between Israel and Palestine. Again, I'm reminded of people working on Cambridge Analytica and just having a list of countries that they were going to destabilize for no real reason except to serve the military might of the United States and of course the wealth extraction process that facilitates. These are the actions of fascists, and I'd like to drill down a little more on the profile of this sort of a person. I was reminded by Facebook of something that I said on Facebook approximately 5.5 years ago, and I was talking about quantum computing, and I posted something. I said some pretty cool breakthroughs in quantum computing and AI in 2018, and shared some articles about that. Facebook wanted to remind me of that conversation, but that was shortly after that time. That was at a time when I had no affiliation with transhumanist organizations too directly. Shortly after that time, I did come to know some of these people a little better. So about a year later, I met Andrew Yang, for example, one of these people who kind of pretty well is an example of one of these this description, we could say, of a limited hangout personality, a person who would overwhelmingly across the boards support military fascism in the United States and far right neoliberal policies. But of course, he became well known as a ostensible supporter of a universal basic income. All of these far-right neoliberals and people trying to break the mold of that a little bit, the alt-right tech bro types, an awful lot of them talk about basic income, but they are doing this in bad faith. They know that the game is rigged, that there's not going to be some new rollout of services in the United States under a neoliberal two-party system that would sooner nuke the entire continent than do something like that. So they talk about it as if it's a realistic prospect, as if it's something they want. When it becomes something that could become a realistic prospect, they shy away from that. That's exactly what Andrew Yang and dozens of others of nearly that profile in the tech world did in 2020 when there were lockdowns and people would have needed a monthly basic income to begin at that time, and there were benefits. Andrew Yang, when he talks about this, he talks about the environmental benefits. Those benefits were beginning to be seen by the lockdown. We saw that in that short time when we had lockdowns in the Western world, many of the harms, the environmental harms that we were doing, started to reverse. And that would have been something where if any of these crypto fascists really believed what they were saying, they would have pushed for a basic income. I'm reminded of another person that I met and I guess had something more of a working relationship with, the founder of the United States Transhumanist Party, Zoltan Isfin, another one of these limited hangout characters. He, during the lockdown times, even though he wrote many articles about basic income, I wrote a small pamphlet also about basic income in 2019. He had already been writing about basic income for a while, having campaigned on it in a presidential campaign in 2016. In 2020, again, when he should have been pushing for a basic income, he was talking about protecting private wealth. That's all he would talk about from January through summer of 2020, because when it starts to look like the neoliberal order might be challenged, as was the case when there were lockdowns, all of these capitalists who are pretending to want something good, like a basic income, will find some reason not to do it, not to pursue that anymore. I listened to an interview with Jason Hickel, whose book, some of his books and articles I've read, and he was talking Radlibs. Jason Hickel is not someone who is absolutely a demonic figure, like, say, Zoltan Isfin or Andrew Yang or most tech personalities. He's less of a stopped clock phenomena, being right only twice a day, and more generally on the right side of history. But he is not openly revolutionary communist, which is the threshold at which I will begin to acknowledge and respect someone. So we could say he's something more of a radlib, something more of a progressive than a communist. And he talks about universal basic services. So there is a difference between these failures. You have the utter failures of capitalism. You have the reformists who are genuinely anti-fascistic, and they don't just talk about universal basic income. They talk about a host of services, so as not to see that a basic income would be used as a Trojan horse to cut other services, as has been demonstrated in the writings of neoliberals who support a basic income, and in certain kinds of actions taken rolling out basic income. Um, but um, there is not a solution. I do not believe there in this reformism of the kind that Jason Hickel is suggesting. I don't think that um, um, it's fair to characterize him as a bad guy in the way that these other people have these issues. But the point is that none of these people capable of changing an economic system to something that is humane and sustainable because they are not communists, they are not dedicated to doing this, they are not organizing and getting together with others and preparing to fight to end capitalism's climate apocalypse. And so anything short of that will fail. The degree to which they are cynical, master manipulators, as I feel almost all tech bros, tech personalities, and so-called techno-optimists are. All of the TESCREAL folks, the Tim McGebrew and others describe, they are acting more or less in bad faith, but not all of them see themselves that way. And but it doesn't matter. If you're doing the wrong thing that leads to the extinction of this species, I don't really care what's floating through your idiot fucking head, right? We have to aim higher, and the only solution really, truly is a communist revolution. We have to seize the means of production. You have nothing to lose but your chains. You literally, that's never been more true. It was a startling thing to say when it was written. In years since, it's become something more like a bromide, but it's never been more true. You have nothing less to lose now. When we have less than 5 years, all climate scientists agree we have less than 5 years to reverse the effects of climate change. And after 5 years, we will be locked in a permanent 2-degree breach that represents the overheating of this planet. That represents a climate apocalypse death spiral of overheating, wherein life will become inhospitable to for human beings. This planet will no longer be habitable, and there is no other option. I'll change gears a little bit. Boycott ChatGPT. If you're using ChatGPT, use another service. I'm not going to say that these other services that are web-based are really all that much better, but there's 30 people working at Google who have said exactly the same thing that Tal Broda said, and I don't know, I don't know about Anthropic, but they're not that great either. If you're able to download a comparable product and use something that is more organized along the lines of open source. Well, I'm going to change gears a little bit and talk about some concepts to do with my proposed Marxist world revolution. We do need to have a Marxist world revolution. And if you're watching this program, if you're somebody who's interacting with me on Facebook and Twitter, I think you probably have some sense of this already, which is why I often talk about in a lot of recent shows, the United Earth Directorate proposed artificial intelligence run governance structure. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about some ideas there right now. So artificial intelligence is not a meaningful discipline if it's not used for human betterment. And almost all of the people who are working in this field now are not people who can genuinely do that. They're people who will take one step forward and 2 steps back. Famous work of Vladimir Lenin describes the actions of capitalists for many decades. And so we need to, the only way that you can be an anti-fascist, the only way that you can present the kind of force that would be able to stop this grand genocide of capitalism's climate apocalypse is to become an anti-fascist. And the only thing that is anti-fascist truly is a communist, a person willing to fight for a humane and sustainable economic system. And I contend that the only significant communists of the 21st century are techno-communists, people who are prepared to use advanced computing and emerging technology to hasten this process of building the structures that would be required to run socialism on every continent in the wake of this world revolution, which must happen within the next 5 years. So let's talk a little bit about what is the potential of this AI and advanced computing. I have said on many of these programs that I don't really like the word AI because it's suggestive of something wistful in human beings, desirous of creating a buddy for themselves. I think it's better to talk about advanced computing. I think it's a little better even to say AI takeoff than technological singularity, even though I've made about 50 posters that say the technological singularity or the AI singularity is near or more. Um, but it's imperative that we have a clear view of where we are in the 20th century, where we are in this AI takeoff. It's imperative that we understand that advanced computing is the most powerful tool that has ever existed, and it must be used as a tool to revolutionary ends in this 5 year time frame, or human beings will cease to exist in a few short decades. And most of you, I have observed, do not take this very seriously when confronted with the prospect of your own non-existence, the non-existence of your offspring. You make some mealy-mouthed statement that has nothing to do with stopping that from happening. You've accepted your demise. It's pathetic. And I propose, humbly, that we not be that weak-willed people, people of this continent, people of other continents, that we instead be willing to do what is necessary and understand the kinds of tools that we will have at our disposal more and more with each passing day. I have said I believe that something like the United Earth Directorate could basically be run just from the resources that exist in the Google Labs. That Google, all of the computing power that Google has could run the United Earth Directorate more or less in some provisional form. But what are these? What is Google really doing instead? Spying on you and propping up a U.S. Military abomination that is the world's worst polluter. Google is a government military contractor, and make no mistake. So how do we avert human extinction caused by this 2-degree breach? All of this damage that's done, it lays at the feet of this military-industrial complex, the world's worst polluter. It protects all of the other Western-led and controlled industrial concerns, super polluters, capitalist pigs. It protects all of them. If you defy them in any way, oh, you'll be in for it. Especially if you're not from this continent. They'll blow you to smithereens. They'll find a way to tank your operation. It might not always be being blown to smithereens. It might just as often be things like the shaping of the World Economic Forum and International Monetary Fund entities like this, whose basic job is to cheat at monopoly on behalf of the United States, creating unbalanced, unfair, unbelievably ridiculous and dysfunctional economic institutions, if they can be so called, in other countries that are basically just making it impossible for people to do anything but serve European and persons of European descent and corporations located there. These are the ruling elites. Billionaires are the people that are killing the planet, and all of this must be done away with. So there's a lot of talk in 2023 for a few months there about AI as an existential threat. I believe that is because because of folks like you and I recognizing how powerful of a tool this would be for ending the dominance of private capital, and so it's not a threat in that sense. It's just a threat to private capital, and all of the things that push up to being a legitimate existential risk deriving from advanced computing would not be risks at all were private capital and fascistic militarism of the U.S. and Western style removed from the equation. So let's talk about what it is to remove these evildoers from the equation. Capitalist-driven AI development has prioritized profit over anything else. So much so that you could say that Silicon Valley, tech, and AI are a joke. And insofar as they're not a joke, doing things like using a massive amount of computing power to put funny little hats on people on Instagram and such, they are a far worse thing than that. They're representing a surveillance state, representing the coordination of this $1 trillion a year military industrial complex that exists in the United States, things of a near comparable scale existing in other fascistic Western countries. We have to change the way that we think about these things and the way that we talk about these things. If we're going to have any chance, we have to be aware of all of this and aware that alternatives exist. A Marxist revolution is necessary in a short time. I don't see how it could happen on the model of, say, that which occurred in the USSR in the years that the conflicts around the formation of the USSR occurred for about 20 years, including a civil war, so-called civil war. It was more or less instigated by the U.S. I've described it a lot on the show as an invasion, but there was we don't have 20 years. But in 20 years, billions of human beings could already be dead from this climate apocalypse death spiral, and we will most certainly be locked into that. So it is then. This is why I refer to myself as a Marxist tech accelerationist, to distinguish clearly from other tech accelerationists who are neoliberal bad actors of the kind that I've described, and other accelerationists of even more confused worldview. The accelerationist generally is just a complete lunatic. But the Marxist tech accelerationist, it would be someone who is able to organize a great number of people across this planet using hyperconnectivity and using things like the digital twin that I've described to begin to bring people together and using technology that's already far more commonplace than this to bring people together and demand that we build appropriate institutions. I follow a lot of people on Twitter. A lot of them spend a lot of time talking about what they don't like, and they're quite good at it, and they're quite often right. I usually don't suffer fools too much. So if I'm following somebody, it's because they're saying things that make sense. But it's not enough to talk about what you don't like on a planet that's going to be dead in 5 years. You might actually have to come up with a fucking game plan too. And that's what I hope to try to do in talking about things like this proposed United Earth Directorate. We have to have foundational change to these economic systems, and that is this thing that I call techno-communism. Um, there is no question, I believe, that anything short of that, people, even if what is Jason Hinkle, what is Jason Hinkle's plan? Is it different? Is it substantively different from what the bad faith proffers of Democrats for being carbon neutral by X number of years in the future when half of humanity is dead? Is it substantively different? We need, quite simply, a massive groundswell of popular energy for seizing the means of production and for the abolition of certain particular kinds of things like Western military outfits, like the military-industrial complex. It's why I'm running for president. Benzai in 2024, America's last president. I've written an executive order that details the complete dissolution of the United States federal government, placing all of those federal holdings and properties under the control of existing political entities, the hundreds and hundreds of Native American tribes around the United States. You can see more about the actual structure of that from my Facebook group, the Real Communist Party of the United States of America. I describe what that looks like in a little more detail. But suffice to say, the United States, these 50 states would still exist more or less in their same form. What would not exist is the federal government. Chief among the things removed would be this military-industrial complex, the great anti-fascist, the great anti-communist horror of the 20th and 21st century. This great Satan would be removed, and we would be free to begin to take real steps towards averting this environmental catastrophe. Other things would have to be done along these lines. It should not be an automotive company still with one brick standing upon another in the United States, knowing what we know. None of these corporations should continue to exist even at this time. Basically, all fossil fuels, except those that would be absolutely required to avoid catastrophic failures in supply chain and so forth, would have to be abolished. Have to get used to riding an electric bicycle, taking a train, taking a bus. Many of us are already doing that. People who are serious about this, it's been no hardship. But we would have to do this. And, I read an article that described the tremendous amount of fuel that was used just in recent months, moving weaponry from the United States to Israel. It's so much of an environmental impact this relationship between the U.S. and Israel and this bombing of Gaza itself has a massive environmental impact. It accounts for a significant percentage of environmental destruction of recent months. Um, uh, so, um, um, but removing these things also, you know, if I don't know if you've had a Beyond Burger or if you've had Beyond Chicken Nuggets, things like this. They taste exactly the same. You have to get used to eating all of these facsimiles or changing your diet because livestock systems are also completely unsustainable. It's a very close second in terms of its harmful environmental impact in terms of the specific sectors. It's a very close second to fossil fuels, and uh, you I am daily amazed that communists, even communists, will push back against this. You don't want to learn some new recipes. Somehow learning new recipes is worse than being fucking dead and having dead children. Many of these people who would say I would never change to a plant-based diet, they have children. You're killing your own children. You've dedicated 18 years to raising them. They will not live long into adulthood because of your choices, because of your unwillingness to change your habits, but more importantly, to demand institutions of a sustainable kind. Um, the concept of runaway superintelligence was talked about in 2023. It's been described by X-Risk and AI safety experts, who are mostly buffoons, as a kind of thing that could lead to catastrophic scenarios, out of control AI systems. Mostly what these people are talking about is they're using a kind of shorthand to talk about a change in the geopolitical dynamic that might not favor white supremacists like themselves quite so much. But they can't say all of that for the most part. So they call this thing something like Moloch, a thing with a mind of its own almost. It doesn't really pass the laugh test. ChatGPT is just something that's able to do some academic writing on your behalf. That's hardly a Moloch. But what I've described, something like the two-tiered system of the United Earth Directorate, wherein every human being has a digital doppelganger, a digital twin, with which they're able to generate more lifestyle and work necessaries on their own behalf, but also with which they're able to interact with the governance structure of something like the United Earth Directorate to a great degree, allowing something approaching a directorate digital democracy. I don't really like to get too hung up on the concept of democracy, because by and large it's a weasel word used to distract from the necessities of the actual representation of working people that takes place in the socialist context. What can be said of the freedoms and liberties and the franchise of voting? What can be said of any of this when you are not guaranteed a place to sleep at night, or food in your stomach, or a public health service to keep you from getting sick 3 times a month with coronavirus, or a public health service to see that your basic medical needs are met? None of this exists in the United States. My city, a recent study in my city in Phoenix. I live in the Phoenix area, in a large city, and a study said that in recent weeks and months, a significant percentage, about 10% of the population of working class renters, possibly more, have been evicted from their homes This is not a sustainable system. None of this would ever happen if there were a housing authority that guaranteed housing to all people. You won't hear Andrew Yang talk about things like that. You won't really hear people, even like Jason Hickel, talk about it as much as they should. That's because this is what communists do. And these people don't want to be confused for communists, so they won't talk about having a public health service written into the Constitution. They won't talk about a housing authority being written into the Constitution. They won't talk about a job. Well, Jason Hickel will talk about a jobs guarantee, but we need stronger stuff still to see that it actually comes to pass. Um, um, and this nothing short of a Marxist transformation of civilization can be the thing that will align technological progress and AI, so-called AI safety, with a sustainable world and the great prosperity that would be born out of this. There are billions and billions of people on this planet who suffer for a lack of this thing like this digital twin. This digital twin, a real-time assistant that will help you in furthering your own interests and affairs. Most people don't even have the basic education that they need, much less the basic services that they need. More than half of the people on this planet would be described as highly impoverished in all of these areas. And all of these people are brilliant people, capable of doing great things. I am a hive mind collectivist. I believe that all human beings should be united to common purpose and see potentials beyond that which we even imagine at this time. And I believe that something like this digital twin, in conjunction with a vast network of hyperconnectivity and human hybrid AI superintelligence, like that described in my essays on the United Earth Directorate, wherein this sort of layered hive mind of the digital twin community would interact with the more centralized superintelligent directorate to allow for control of supply chains more effectively than we are able to do now. All of the services that we see Western governments failing to do could easily be done by techno-socialists and ultimately techno-communists. And I was going to read a little thing about China and the U.S. Response to descriptions of differing approaches to AI in these two countries, a piece that was written about in The Guardian. But my throat's getting a little froggy, shouting too much, so I'm going to end this show and save that China show for another day.